Hello.
Hi,
Viki
Bettina.
and Sam.
Yeah,
it's
Bettina.
a pleasure having you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. Let me shortly introduce yourself, okay? So, Viki, you are a middle and senior school teacher here at MIS and also an alumni.
That's right.
And Sam, your role is a little bit more complicated, but we get to that in a second.
Okay.
And you both also have Nico, your son, here at the school, and he's a second grader.
Yep.
So maybe, Viki, you want to start explaining what are you doing exactly here at MIS?
Sure. So I teach English in the middle school. I teach grades 7 and 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I started in this position in 2021.
Okay, wonderful. Sam, what about you?
So I currently, I've done a lot of substitute teaching here. I was
Yeah.
a teacher here in the past. Maybe we'll get to that because this is our origin story, how we met was
Yes.
here at MIS. And then now currently, I'm just beginning as what we're calling an artist in residence here at MIS, where
Wow.
in the audiovisual studio that we have in the Makers Lab, I will be working with middle and senior school music students to make high quality recordings and digital productions of song compositions that they are making in their music classes.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Is that also your profession?
It is a side profession, a passion. I do make music. I've released several albums, and
Wow.
but
You
I
are
also
famous.
I'm also to a few.
He is a little
to
bit.
a few, as Viki likes to say, and Viki is also famous to a few,
Oh,
especially in
okay.
especially in the MIS community.
Yeah, in a different capacity.
But I'm a creative writer, and I taught creative writing at New York University for 10 years before we moved here. So
Okay.
we came here from New York.
All right. So maybe we come to that now.
Okay.
What brought you both to MIS?
Two stories with many layers.
Yeah. So for me, it's a return for sure. And I used to go to school at MIS. I started in grade 1 and finished in grade 12. So I'm what they call a lifer. And as you can imagine, that makes for a very deep connection to this place.
Yes.
My mother was a teacher here. So that's truly what brought me here.
Okay.
She taught German, and she was here from almost the very beginning of MIS, and so she taught in various schools. Back when the school was small, she taught all kinds of grades, and then later she focused on junior school, and she taught German in the junior school. So she's really what brought me here.
Good.
Not just into this life, but also
Yes.
to the school.
Yes. Yeah. And you are now continuing the journey with your son, right?
Yes, exactly. So it's a cyclical pattern that seems to be repeating. Yeah, of course, it's my own experience, and it's a layering of many years and many different phases of my life. And sometimes that's somewhat difficult to disentangle, but it makes for a very rich tapestry.
Lovely. Sam, what about you? What brought you to MIS?
I came to MIS for the first time as an assistant kindergarten teacher in 2006. And it was sort of coincidental that a family friend of ours from Massachusetts, where I'm from, was serving, Mary Sepala, was serving as the head of school here for several years. And I was a couple years out of college and was very curious to live abroad. And she was the one connection that I had in Europe or anywhere outside of the US that might be able to turn into a job of some sort. So I called her up and asked if there were any positions that I might be qualified for. And she said, actually, we need an assistant in kindergarten. And we really appreciate having young men in the junior school because there aren't so many.
That is true.
And so about a month later, I was on my way over here from Seattle. And then we met in the first 2 weeks that we were both here. Viki wasn't meant to be here that year, but she had been here as an intern after her uni for 1 year in grade 1, right?
Correct.
And then this was the following year, and she was figuring out what she was going to do, but had been asked to substitute in junior school German temporarily. And so we met then.
So that's a very interesting love story here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's something that
Born of coincidence.
Yeah,
But
total coincidence.
all of them are. So.
I just want to say, most of the love stories are not really planned.
Yeah.
Well, that's lovely. That's lovely.
Yeah.
As I said before, you have Nico, your son. He's a second grader.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to elaborate a little bit. How was it for him being a student here at MIS?
So he came to MIS in EC 56.
Okay.
After attending German forest kindergarten or Waldkindergarten. And it was a fairly easy transition for him. It felt very natural because, I was already here.
He was already bilingual.
He had already heard so much.
That helps, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he had heard so much of, my time at the school, because not only was I a student here and told him, I went to school here too. And even though I started in first grade and you're starting before me, we share that. And that was, I think encouraging for him. And he knew I would always be close by and that we all love the school and feel very connected to it, I think set the tone for a positive experience.
What would you say as parents? What do you appreciate most about MIS?
I would say the amount of careful attention that the teachers and the administrators bring to the students is really above and beyond, and when your child is having a difficult time with something, there are always, in our experience, there have always been at least 3 people who are, if not more, who are at the ready to be like, how can we help? Do we need to, sort of pull out to the side for a moment to see what's going on here so that we can help out? And that kind of individualized attention is really amazing when, especially when you're having challenges. That to me is the first thing that comes to mind.
I absolutely second that. And also, I would say it is wonderful to be in an environment where there's a strong feeling of community. And I think we have that on many different levels. I mean, I feel that kind connection with my colleagues in the junior school. I know he's well looked after, as Sam was saying, but I also feel like there are so many parents from all around the world who are seeking people to make friends with and talk to. And I like that. And it's in a way, it's like a small, global village. And for me, this sense of coming home, even though MIS has changed a lot, it has grown a lot, I've always felt comfortable with that kind of environment where even though I'm in a place that feels secure and feels in a sense like it's its own microcosm, it is also diverse and it's global, and people bring a welcoming feeling with them when they come here and they seek connection and they're open. So I feel that Nico has been embraced here in a way that I would hope for. And as Sam said, there is specific attention to each individual person. There's, a strong feeling that you're seen as the human being you are and will be taken care of.
Yeah, and I think the physical space too is, it's just
lovely?
so, and it's not just for looks, right? It creates a feeling.
Yes.
And when you're a child or an adult who's spending their days at a place like this, it makes a really big difference when you're in nice outdoor spaces and nice indoor spaces, and there's natural light everywhere, and people are smiling, and you can, when you're moving between spaces, you get to go outside and you get some fresh air, and then you're in a new building with a new feel. And I think all of that stuff is really valuable in a way that could go sort of understated, but which we really value. And I think, we moved from New York City, where the alternative, if we had stayed there, which we could have, he would have been going to in all likelihood, a New York City public school that would have had a completely different feel. It would have been much tighter, not to say anything bad about that, but it would have been a much more confined urban experience, which, for us, Viki, growing up here, I grew up in like a suburban, semi-rural college town kind of environment where I was outside a lot. And so for us, the return to here after living in New York for 12 years was sort of like a breathing out back to like, we loved living in New York for our 20s and mid 30s. It was a fantastic place to be. And then we had a kid there, and it starts to get hard fast. It gets expensive really fast. And it feels a bit like a grind. And then coming here, which we did sort of as a trial, we did like a half year trial before we gave up our apartment in New York. And then it was just really quickly like, oh, this is like the place for us to be right now. And for him to be.
I think also coming here, it makes something with you. You know, it's such a nice area. It's such a nice environment. And whenever I come to the school and I observe the people who also come here, they always start smiling when they are entering the campus. Because you have this fantastic nature, you have these fantastic buildings. It's just a lovely environment. That was also one reason why I joined. Coming to that maybe a little bit later. Is there anything, and maybe especially addressing you, Sam, that you find challenging living here in Bavaria?
Yeah, I mean, I have such prolonged experience being here because my first time here was 2006. We've been back at least once a year, ever since then. We would always come during the summer. So I'm very comfortable in the German culture at this point. And I found the German culture pretty comfortable pretty quickly, despite not having the German language when I arrived. But I made the effort to try and learn at least basic German, to be able to order food in the restaurant, to be able to have simple conversations, to interact at the grocery store. And I think all of that stuff's really important, and that even when you just get to that level of sort of like beginner to intermediate German, that I find that it is a welcoming culture, and that people are, open and curious to talk to people from elsewhere. And while we do have a built-in community here at MIS that makes having a group of friends it's kind of at the ready, especially when you're married to someone who's so connected to the school, but also just colleagues immediately, like the cohort of people that I came in with in 2006. Some of those people are still here, who either stayed or other people like us who went away and then came back. And MIS does bring people back. It has a magnetic thing, And Viki's not the only alumni who's now a teacher.
That is true.
There's a number of them, and there are a lot of alumni who are parents with kids at the school now.
And some of the teachers who taught me are still here, who taught me as a student.
Isn't that
so there's continuity, there's history, and I think it speaks for the school.
Talking about learning German, Sam, what would you say? Is that a recommendation that you would give to new people joining MIS?
Absolutely, yeah. It's to me, it's a no-brainer. If you're moving somewhere, you should try and at least learn the basics. And there are plenty of people who have been here for many years and haven't really gone much beyond that. I would say that I've, over time and being married to a German and living in a house where German is spoken regularly, I have a leg up, right? That like I'm exposed to the pronunciation, and I'm able to absorb that stuff on a regular basis in a way that if you're living by yourself, or you're living with your English speaking or a different language speaking partner, and German isn't part of your daily household life, you're not gonna, it's a bit more of a challenge for sure. But as everybody will tell you, most people under the age of 70 speak English pretty well here. When you encounter older people out in the world, that sometimes they don't want to, or they're out of practice, or they aren't confident, and they won't, they won't necessarily speak English with you. But in terms of getting by, you don't need German to get by, but it's nice, and obviously people appreciate it when you learn some. And I think it's a really it's a really fascinating language. I mean, I'm a language person, so it comes naturally to me that I find lots of fascination in all these German compound words that you have,
and we have a lot.
And there's a lot that when you translate them are very poetic, and if you like literally translate them into their English. So I really appreciate it as an opportunity to go beyond my own sort of limited foreign language horizons, because in the US we're not great with foreign languages. We start learning usually, on average people start taking a second language in like 6th grade. So if you don't have 2 languages in your house, you're not going to be a bilingual person. So I appreciate it, the opportunity.
So I assume your son Nico is bilingual.
Right?
Yes, yeah.
That's also fantastic.
Yeah.
I value that a lot. It was almost a prerequisite for me because I want to be able to be as profoundly connected to him as possible. And I think and I communicate in English and German. And so I wanted to have that kind of, both of those dimensions available for our connection.
Yeah, and she spoke German with him from birth. So even before we moved here, he was already fluent.
So you catch up now.
That's
good. Yeah. Lovely. I also heard that you all have an adventure map. Can you tell us a little bit about this weekend tradition?
Okay, so this is something that started during the pandemic. And it wasn't only weekends back then necessarily, when Nico wasn't able to go to school for a while and Viki was doing remote teaching. And there was just a lot of time to fill, especially between Nico and I. I was doing primary parenting at that point and she was working full time on Zoom basically. And so I would pull out a map, a relatively dated older map that I just found in the house of the area. Of the Starnberger See area, the Ammersee, and down to Seeshaupt where you live, and I just started looking for places that we had never been before. I would look for either villages that we'd never been to, or like you see a green area, and you're like, well, that might be a really nice forest with paths that we can walk around in, and so then I just started picking spots off of the map, knowing nothing else, not necessarily looking them up on my phone or anything, and then going for drives out there. And then I started highlighting all of the places that we had been.
Oh, lovely.
And then it created this sort of, this nice visual analog representation of all of the adventures that we'd had.
Is there one spot that you specifically liked when you did your adventure mapping?
That's a good question.
Or is everything beautiful here?
No, I think we made a lot of great discoveries, and they're all, nothing stands out, but there are so many spectacular landscapes here that you could almost pick any little Dorf, like Monatshausen, not that we didn't know that before, but I think we explored everything a little bit more thoroughly.
Yeah, that was sort of the point of it, was that instead of going on Google Maps and looking for nearby popular spots, it was just finding something not based on somebody's recommendation, and just being like, well, let's go see what Monatshausen is like. And it's this tiny little Dorf, but it has a fantastic view of the Alps. And there's so many places like that here, which are just like little villages on the map, and no one's going to tell you to go there, but you might drive through, or you might decide to pick it off a map and go there, and then you see that it's gorgeous because so many places around here are. And one thing to say is that, like, I approach that sort of with the spirit of a tourist as much as someone who's a resident, right? And that's one of the advantages of being an expat, as I am, is that I sort of retain this feeling of like, I'm a visitor here, right? And I'm not tired of the familiar routines of it. I'm not stuck in any ruts. And I'll say that, and I think you can confirm this, that a lot of places that I end up taking us to are places that Viki's never been, despite having lived here her whole life.
that's yeah.
You know, because you get, when you're from a place, you get into your familiar routines, and and you've never turned down that road.
That's true.
You know, and I'm like, well, what's down that road? And you're like, well, I've never thought of that. And then we go. And so that spirit, like when you're an expat in a place, you know, that can be true anywhere, of course. But here it really pays off, because any direction you go, you're going to find something beautiful, whether it's south to the mountains, you know, over to one of the other lakes that's different from the one you live on, or, you know, and there's always going to be something appealing. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And Sam, we have prepared some questions for you.
Great.
So if you would like to just answer with a very small answer, okay?
Yeah, you go
Which
first
one?
every time.
Vicky, you go first.
Okay.
Vicky, what's your favorite Bavarian food?
Spätzle.
Schnitzel.
And the worst?
I don't eat meat, so...
Okay. Sam, anything you have eaten you think, oh, that is really gross?
Oh God, there are some things for sure. I don't like Leberwurst.
Okay, good, good.
Maybe a common answer. Yeah.
Vicky, your favorite holiday or festival in Bavaria?
Have to say Christmas.
Christmas? Sam?
I'll say Oktoberfest. Somebody's got to say it.
Do you have a lederhosen?
Yes, of course.
Good. You
Since
have
that
a
very
dirndl?
first year.
I have a
course.
dirndl, of course.
Of course, lovely.
We still wear the same lederhosen and dirndl that we wore when we met. Because actually the
That's
Oktoberfest
good.
was like the first time we really came together and hit it off.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
good.
which happens a lot here.
It does,
Yeah.
actually, it does.
You know.
It's a matchmaker.
And everybody
is.
knows
Environment.
it.
There are a lot of
That's why they come.
there are a lot of MIS
Yeah,
couples
yeah.
that were made at the Wiesn.
it is true.
Yeah,
Some of them last.
yeah. A lot of them. Yeah.
Vicky, favorite season in Bavaria?
Spring.
Spring?
I'll say autumn.
Okay.
I love spring too, but I love autumn just as much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Although summer's really good here too.
Yeah.
But we often travel away back to the States for the summer, so we miss a lot of it. But just the beginning of summer in May and June is really perfect here.
Vicky, the best thing you can do in summer?
Swim in the lake.
Swimming the lake. Sam?
I love biking. Biking
Okay.
and then swimming in the lake. I mean,
Okay.
there's so much you can see, and you know, the bike possibilities here are so fantastic. You know, whether it's on the bike paths that are separate from the roads, of which there are many, but and so many forest roads, and then jumping in the lake once you've worked up a heat.
Lovely. Best thing to do in winter?
Skiing.
Skiing?
My answers are so predictable, but
Yeah.
really skiing is one of my favorite things to do here.
Great.
Yeah, and we discovered ice skating, or rediscovered ice skating with our son last year. There's some really beautiful ice skate. You know, when the ponds freeze over here, everybody goes out.
Yes.
And it's such a great community feel at the Meisinger See here last year. It was great. And then people are playing hockey, and people are curling. What is this auf Deutsch?
Yeah.
Eisstockschießen.
Eisstockschießen.
Yeah.
That's this long word.
Yeah,
Eisstockschießen.
Eisstockschießen. Ice stick shooting. No, stock. Yeah. It's one of those great German
interesting.
compounds. Yeah.
Yes.
But also, our son loves to sled, and
Yeah.
there's so many great rolling hills around here.
That's
Sledding,
true.
there's so many great sledding things and sledding
Yeah.
opportunities.
We just started our sledding season, but we haven't had quite enough snow yet to
Yeah.
go out multiple
We need to
times.
wait a little bit.
Yeah.
Sam, question for you. Strangest thing about living in Bavaria? Remember when you came first time?
This is a strange answer, but it's the first thing that comes to my mind. There's a thing called a Geisterfahrer here, which I will explain is, for the uninitiated, is somebody who is driving on the Autobahn in the wrong direction on the wrong side of the Autobahn, which I've never encountered anywhere else in the world, but which you hear on the radio all the time. There's a Geisterfahrer on the A6 Richtung Salzburg. And you're like, how does this keep happening? What are these people doing, and why have they not been stopped? And they'll come on the radio 5 minutes later, and they'll be like, the Geisterfahrer is still driving on the A6. And they're like, what? Is it a death wish? Is it like, what is happening? So I find this really strange, the Geisterfahrer.
Maybe they're so fascinating by the nature that they just picked the wrong entry.
Yeah. That's what the Germans say, because they don't find it strange at all. Whenever I bring it up, they're like, well, they're just...
And then we take the right way. And
they clearly got on the wrong... And I'm like, well, then you stop. Wouldn't you stop and get off?
But they don't know it. You know, they think the others are the Geisterfahrers. Like, is there only one? There are hundreds, you know.
I've heard similar arguments from you and your mother. It's apparently a very normal thing to you guys.
I admit it's strange, because in a country as supposedly orderly as Germany, for someone not to understand that everybody's going in the other direction.
It still happens. That's
surprising.
Very interesting.
I heard it on the radio like 2 days ago.
Really?
Another Geisterfahrer.
Yeah.
Final questions for you. Is there one thing you have on your bucket list that you would like to do in Bavaria? You say, this is what we definitely either need to show to Nico, or that you would like to do.
Mm-hmm. One thing that comes to mind for me is I would like to, it's almost embarrassing to admit that I've never been, but I've never been to the Weihnachtsmarkt or Christkindlmarkt in Nuremberg.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like to visit
classic,
that.
Famous,
it's a quintessential one, and I haven't been. So I think that would be quite magical.
Lovely. Sam, anything that comes to your mind?
Yeah, well, we haven't been up to the Zugspitze with him either, I don't think.
Really?
I don't think we have. You know, it's the highest point in Germany, and we see it every day.
Yes.
We drive out. Recently, someone in the forest near our house cut down some trees, and suddenly when we drive out from our little street, we see the Zugspitze through this new opening in the trees.
Okay.
You know, which feels quite, we just wake up, we drive out, and there's the tallest mountain in Germany.
Yeah.
But of course, you can ski up there, which we have done in the past, but that's such a special thing to be up on the glacier.
Yes, that's
true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think we've skied with him up there. I think that's something I would really like to do with him. But Nuremberg. There's so many great little cities in Bayern as well. You know, I've never been to Augsburg. You know, it's even with my tourist mentality, there's still so many appealing places that you can go to. Yeah.
So still a lot of things to do.
Definitely, we won't run out.
It's inexhaustible.
Options.
Yeah,
wonderful.
There's so much. Yeah.
Viki and Sam, thank you very much for
you.
coming. It was a pleasure having the conversation with you.
Yeah.
All the best for you to MIS and to your son Nico.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.